In this review of the week's news, Canterbury remembers the Gallipoli landings 100 years on. Is there reason for foreign developers to invest in the city? And we're at the final session of Mayor in the Chair. This is CTV News Week in Review. I'm Jared McCulloch. This year's Anzac weekend marks 100 years since our soldiers went to war in Gallipoli. We went along to the Christchurch dawn service. A day of remembrance, a special tribute marking the Anzacs landing at Gallipoli, those who fought in the Great War 100 years ago. Thousands of local Cantabrians gathered at Cramner Square for the dawn service to pay their respects to the over 18,000 Kiwi troops who didn't return. The proceedings started with the dawn parade.
It is an honour and a privilege to be standing here today. When I saw the numbers walking and how far they were walking to be here today, I was absolutely moved, and I knew that this was going to be a special occasion to gather alongside our war veterans before dawn on April the 25th, 2015.
Then the laying of the wreaths. From emergency services, the government, the council and also our neighbours, Australia.
Over many years it has come to emphasise the friendship and bravery shared by these two countries in fighting to preserve the principles and freedoms that we hold so dear.
And to conclude, the 3-volley gun salute. Anzac Day is about remembering all the men and women who were overseas on behalf of our country, reminding us of the services they did a century ago. Lest we forget. Jared McCulloch, CTV News. After 3 years, the first major anchor project from the government's controversial blueprint is almost complete. The bus exchange has been months in the making, but who will own the building? Marcus Gibbs explains.
It's a $101 million development and it's only weeks away from opening. But as the finishing touches are added, a Christchurch City councillor says there are still questions about the bus interchange that the government has failed to answer.
We still have no clarity about who's actually going to own it.
The government and council are sharing the cost of turning the blueprint into a reality. The Crown will pay $2.9 billion, while another $1.9 billion of work will be covered by the council. The council's paying $40 million to build the bus interchange, and the Crown's covering the rest. In August last year, the interchange was set for an April opening, but now we're only a week out from May, and its opening date still hasn't been announced. Johansson told Chris Lynch during the filming of CTV's Lynched that he was concerned over the lack of information available on the project. He's demanding Sarah answers questions over the project's future viability.
So we've got a major facility that's been built, ready to open in a few weeks, and we don't even know as a city who's going to own it, who's going to operate it. I think that's pretty concerning.
In a statement, a Sarah spokesperson says the future ownership of the bus interchange is still not known. He says initially the Crown will own the bus interchange and will provide for facilities management such as cleaning and security. Environment Canterbury will operate bus services out of the facility and will staff those operations, but the future arrangements for the facility are still to be determined. The spokesperson says these ownership and management arrangements have been the subject of numerous discussions between Sarah, the City Council, ECAN and the New Zealand Transport Agency. Meanwhile, Johansson says the interchange should have been merged with Community House, with non-profit groups working out of the top floor.
A huge amount of money has been spent on building it without any strategic thinking, I think, as to what is its future life and future purpose.
The bus interchange example is just one of what he's calling several anchor project failures. Another is the alteration of plans for the green space in the CBD. It was originally pitched as a green frame bordering the city centre, but its purpose has since changed.
Things like the southern frame, which was supposed to be a major cycleway and green corridor, no longer going to be the case. You look at the eastern frame, that's going to be full of residential, so the nice green picture that people saw when the blueprint was announced is not really what's going to happen there.
The timelines for the anchor projects have been updated several times since the blueprint was announced in 2012. Since then, there have been a number of delays, but it looks like the bus interchange will open in a matter of weeks, but the question still remains, who will own it? Marcus Gibbs, CTV News.
An outspoken Christchurch developer is criticising Sarah for sending 2 staff members to Sri Lanka and India on an investment mission. He says there's currently no reason for international investors to spend money in Christchurch. Some are calling it a waste of ratepayers' money. Others say it's an opportunity to enhance the city's relationship with China. This month's Sister City trip was certainly controversial, with the mayor back in her seat now and Leanne Dalzell hailing the trip as a success. Celebrating 30 years of Sister City relations, the mayor and 2 city councillors flew to China to visit Gansu and Wuhan, 2 of Christchurch's sister cities. The mayor's talks with China's leaders was partly focused on education and tourism. However, it seems the mayor was more interested in potential investment opportunities in Christchurch that China's leaders could tap into.
The scale of what we have to achieve and the limitations on everyone's budgets. I mean, there just isn't an endless pool of money. There is significant interest in creating investment opportunities over here.
Mayor Dalzell believes foreign investors are important for Christchurch's rebuild, and she's confident developers are already planning to build here.
There absolutely is interest in investing in Christchurch, but certainly the feedback that we got was that it didn't seem obvious where the investment opportunities would lie. And so, you know, as a council, we've been having discussions about how we create a single point of entry for investment.
However, a prominent Christchurch developer says there isn't interest from any overseas investors when it comes to the region's rebuild.
The Chinese and Japanese and Koreans, they haven't pulled their wallets out and started spending money. They keep saying they're going to, but they're sitting around doing nothing.
And he says it's likely investors won't be throwing cash around anytime soon.
You know, we haven't rushed off to Japan where they had a tsunami and the nuclear fallout. Why would you? We don't know the sentence, so why do they expect overseas people? It's not going to happen. Hey, in 10 years' time, yes, but not now.
However, Sarah recently told CTV News international investors are in talks behind the scenes. When pressed on why it's taken so long for international investors to arrive on our shore, after all, the earthquake was more than 4 years ago, Mayor Dalzell told me until now the council has been focusing on its day-to-day business. But with the long-term plan nearly out of the way, she says councillors want to start working to pull international investors into the city and keep them here.
We've got tied up in the long-term plan and the district plan review and all of these things, and we've actually just finally got to the point where we have to say, look, we can't wait. We actually have to get on with the job of creating that single point of entry into the city and just see what happens.
And she says it's the way forward for the city.
There's a lot going on in Christchurch, but in order to get the scale of momentum that we need, I think we need external assistance, and finding a mechanism for bringing that external opportunity into the city itself, I think would be a great advantage.
With the City Council now finishing up consultation on the long-term plan, tracking down international investors will be at the top of these councillors' agendas, with discussions kicking off in the council chamber next week. Jared McCulloch, CTV News. Well, still to come, are sex workers safer in Christchurch than Auckland? Welcome back. A Canterbury University researcher has released a study on sex workers in Christchurch and the level of violence on the streets following the earthquakes. Marcus Gibbs reports.
Manchester Street on a Friday night. As cars go up and down, several women wave out. They're Christchurch's sex workers, working the streets as they've done so, night after night for weeks, months, and as we found out, some for even decades. It's these women of the night that a University of Canterbury researcher wants to interview. She wants to know how dangerous it is to work on the streets and how the job has changed since the earthquakes.
The issue with victimization in the sex industry is an important problem, and the more we understand about it, the better off we are, I suppose.
The university professor worked with 4 other researchers on her paper. It will soon be published in an economic publication. The research is based on a survey 9 years ago in 2006. Back then, hundreds of sex workers in New Zealand's 3 major cities, Auckland, Christchurch and Wellington, were surveyed. The results paint a picture of how different life was for sex workers in the Garden City then compared to now.
What we found is that Christchurch is actually safer than Auckland when it comes to the street sector. So you might actually find that that's surprising.
Recent press suggests there's more violence on Manchester Street in 2015, with disturbances and brothels really making the headlines. Last year, there were several physical and sexual assaults involving street prostitutes.
You don't think, oh shit, it's not going to happen to you. You're always on the guard. You're always on the watch.
You've really got to be on your toes. You've got to, look out for yourself and really listen to your instincts. Yeah, if you don't have good street smarts, you could get in a lot of trouble.
However, in 2006, brothels were considered more dangerous.
What we think is going on is that it's the way the Christchurch street sector has always been quite compact, sort of fairly sort of concentrated in Manchester Street, that is something that makes actually the street sector a lot safer than it would be in a city where it's less compact or more spread out.
The researchers found that alcohol, drug dependency or both more than doubled the risk of violence in the industry in 2006. And last year, while filming current affairs show Street Stories for CTV, I found prostitutes still needed drugs or alcohol to get through a night's work.
Because all my life I've always got drunk, because when I get to work I'm drunk as a skate.
I've had three tonight, yeah. So, yeah, just a little bit of numbing and to take the edge off the cold.
Sex workers have never had a risk-free job, and 3 years after the 2003 decriminalisation of prostitution, violence on the streets was still not unheard of. 38% of all the sex workers in Christchurch, Wellington and Auckland had at least one adverse experience relating to sex work during a 12-month period. 23% of all those surveyed had money stolen or clients refusing to pay. 20% had been threatened with violence or received abusive text messages, and 16% had been subject to physical violence, rape, or had been held somewhere against their will. Last year's sex worker Tans told me violence from clients was an expected part of the job.
I actually got raped about 4 months ago and bashed, and I find that wasn't very nice, and I'm just trying to get over it, so I haven't been working that much.
The survey found that despite the legalisation of the work, street workers were unmotivated to move to brothels, as on the street they didn't need to pay a cut of their earnings. These benefits outweighed any perceived risk.
I won't say it's quick and easy, but it can be a quick way to make money. And, when you've got to pay the power and put food on the table for the kids and provide an education for them.
Christchurch sex workers in 2015 faced new issues. Roadworks down Manchester Street following the earthquake stopped clients from accessing prostitutes. To counter this, the sex workers moved into the residential end of the street. Residents and prostitutes clashed before the street reopened. Further work is planned for Manchester Street as the street is widened. Again, this could force the sex workers to move out of the city's sex haven.
If the safety has deteriorated in the street sector, then we start to get a bit more understanding of what is actually affecting that safety of street sex workers.
If new research is commissioned, the university also wants to interview the clients of sex workers. That won't be an easy task. Clients enjoy being anonymous and won't want their names or faces publicised.
If we want to understand truly this industry, we need to understand both sides. If you make the client feel like this is anonymous and it's in a safe and secure place, they perhaps might be willing to do that.
The researchers hope another study would help the public understand the issues prostitutes face in 2015. Marcus Gibbs, CTV News.
Does obesity start in the womb? It might sound like a far-fetched idea, but one researcher thinks there might be a link. We hear about obesity more and more these days, a growing problem every year, and one Canterbury researcher has been exploring the issue, but right from the start. New Zealand is one of the largest countries in the world when it comes to people and weight, with almost 1 in 3 adults aged 15 and over being noted as obese, as well as 1 in 9 children aged between 2 and 14. But she's looked even further back, looking at pregnant women and high birth weight.
I looked at the relationship with socioeconomic status, obesity and iron supplements taken during pregnancy.
Rachel Webb has just graduated from the University of Canterbury, and over the last 3 years she's been busy exploring high birth weights here in New Zealand. However, when it comes to newborn babies and obesity, she says there's no real clear answer and it's a complicated issue.
Being obese does greatly increase the risk of high birth weight, but it could well be driven by underlying factors that we can't account for, most likely sort of a genetic predisposition. So in fact, a woman who is obese may not lower her risk of high birth weight if she lost weight before becoming pregnant.
She says it's a topic that hasn't been well publicised because many researchers around the world haven't focused this far back. More on the cause of current problems in growing people.
There are a few papers in the literature that have looked at the birth weight of children and their later life health outcomes, in particular their obesity risk. Not many though, it's not a subject that has received a lot of attention.
There have been a number of studies around obesity and fast food restaurants, an issue that has been brought up many times before. However, she says it comes down to more awareness around fast food outlets, with people being better informed about choices they can make.
And I actually found it was not quite the relationship I would have expected, given conventional wisdom about fast food being bad for you and fattening. In fact, I actually found that for many of the restaurants I looked at, there didn't appear to be any relationship between more of these restaurants and increased obesity risk. And sometimes I even found a negative relationship where more fast food restaurants in the area actually decreased obesity risk.
She says she'd like to see more research done on her study, continuing to find out what causes obesity to increase.
I think it's just sort of a new problem. Obesity is something that's only the last few decades that it's really been such a major health issue. So we do seem to be seeing more and more research being put into these topics. And high birth weight is, again, something that there just doesn't really seem to be that much general awareness of it as an issue. A lot of people are very aware that low birth weight is problematic, and so therefore think just a bigger baby will be better. But actually at the extreme end of large birth weight, it becomes a problem as well.
So there's a long way to go, but it could be one step forward to a solution to a growing problem. Jared McCulloch, CTV News. Still to come, the Mayor gets her seat back. It's the final of Mayor in the Chair. Welcome back. Does the city need to create a hub for Pacifica people? That's exactly what one group wants, and this week they made it clear to the Christchurch City Council.
A classroom of little mayors. During today's Christchurch City Council Mayor in the Chair session, Elmwood School took the centre seat to address the councillors on a 10-year vision of a city filled with flying cars, apples made of candy and buildings made from chocolate. Other honorary mayors also had a chance to say something too, including 19-year-old Josiah with an important message.
Māori and Pacific have never really had a clear space in the visible framework or in any of the parts of our city.
It's a serious issue that Josiah wants to see addressed. Pacifica people have had a presence in New Zealand since the 1940s, but the local community feels undervalued by the council and wants extra support.
Our community want a Pacific village, or at least a Pacific space somewhere in Christchurch where they can feel like it is permanent, it is visible, that our people can meet, teach and share culture and art with others in our community.
It could be a building, a community centre, a place for Pacifica to call their own. Josiah says the Pacific community would rally behind the cause and help fundraise to build the centre if it got the tick of approval from the council.
It would be great to see CCC challenge this in the many different ways this can go ahead, and then Christchurch be looked at as a model for the rest of the country to support and engage with Pacific communities.
City Councillor Glenn Livingston is supporting the teenagers' call for further interaction between the the council and the city's Pacifica population.
He highlighted the fact that there just hasn't been that profile and that there needs to be, and I think we need to up it.
Josiah wants to see the council working directly with Pacifica people sooner rather than later.
The council should have a representative on the Christchurch Pacifica network. That's our key body where we have all the different interagency groups that work from government level and also the NGOs in our community work together to identify issues for our community and work to support them.
I'm sure we can set up a direct contact. I think they want some kind of council appointee or liaison with that.
Following the meeting, Josiah told CTV News the Pacifica community are mostly based in the east and they would love to see New Brighton revitalised. The idea for the Pacifica Village is one he's really passionate about.
Now, whether this was an actual physical residential space or something with like a collection of social services which were all together to support our community, this would be a place where Pacific people could say, this is our part of Christchurch, this is where we belong.
One option could be to turn part of the residential red zone into a special place for the community.
One things we talk about is a community park in the red zone where there could be vegetable plantings or a Pacific-style garden.
He says there have been previous discussions about setting up a Pacifica Village and he believes it would be beneficial to his community. Marcus Gibbs, CTV News.
And still with Mayor in the chair, this week was the final round of this new public consultation concept. Marcus Gibbs takes a look at several sessions which had made the most impact on council.
Canterbury, that's it, you've had your shot. Now it's time to welcome back Mayor Leanne Dalzell. But while she was away in China, several people have had quite the impact on the council chambers as honorary mayors of the moment. A call for action last week to highlight a growing problem saw Reverend Mike Coleman pleading for insurance-troubled residents to get in touch.
I really want to know how many are still battling.
Speaking to councillors, the Canterbury Insurance Advisory Service made sure it was heard. The Christchurch City Council set up the charitable organisation 2 years ago to help the most vulnerable residents still battling insurance claims, but Mike wants anyone still fighting their insurers to get in touch.
I want the numbers to come in and get it out there, tell them that we're here.
So far, the team have helped 180 desperate people with their insurance needs, but these advocates know the problem is far greater.
If we suddenly have a 1,500 on the books that we can't deal with, that's the issue of the city, not the issue of us.
Councillors told CTV News their hands were tied.
In a perfect world, of course, it would be wonderful to fund them more, but there are a lot of pressures.
During the fourth round of Mayor in the Chair, an emotional mother begged the councillors to consider her daughter as they plan for the next 10 years of Christchurch's development.
When you're building, when you're planning for the city, I want you to see her. I want you to think of her.
17-year-old Ella is confined to a wheelchair and she's living in a city that stops her reaching her full potential. The councillors won't be forgetting Ella anytime soon. Councillor Glenn Livingston says accessibility is a core issue for the council.
Can we look at the city through the lens of accessibility? So that's important for us to hear, for the independent hearings panel to hear over our district plan.
Finally, local NGOs are upset the city councillors have ignored the nearly 1,000 groups in Christchurch that fall under their umbrella. They took the Mayor's chair to address council plans to potentially cut their funding.
The pain of the cuts that everybody was asked to share equally was not being shared with some other entities, so there was a real inequity between how the not-for-profit sector was being treated and other entities that were being funded by the City Council, and that smacked to me of disrespect of a lack of value for the sector.
Councillors were shocked to hear how bad the city's NGOs are struggling and want to help.
Members of the council that were here today have heard loud and clear the importance of that community grant funding, not only the fact that it exists and that it shouldn't be cut, but also the fact that there needs to be certainty around when it's made available.
Due to their popularity, it won't be long before the Mayor and the Chair sessions are back again. Marcus Gibbs, CTV News.
And that is CTV News Week in Review. I'm Jared McCulloch. Have a great Anzac weekend.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.